Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to another enlightening episode of Sustainability Forward. I'm your host, Rishi, and with me is my co host, Carmine. Today, we have an interesting topic that delves into the heart of carbon emissions from both natural and artificial sources. And we'll be diving deep into these issues at hand while shedding light on the scales of emissions from various sources.
That's right, Rishi. Episode 2. So, we're talking today about carbon emissions. This is Carmine. We are thrilled to be your guides to this exploration of carbon emitters. Now, this is a topic where our target audience could be very well informed already, very well already known about this area. But we're trying to provide some technical details and insightful statistics.
Of course. And we often hear about carbon emissions, but I think it's important to understand that these can come from a variety of different sources. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to break them down into two main categories, natural and artificial. So many of you would know that natural sources include processes such as volcanic eruptions, wildfires, such as the ones that happened in North America recently, and even contribution of plants and animals as part of their respiratory processes. These emissions, however, have been part of Earth's carbon cycle for eons.
Yeah, and this is one part of the coin. On the other side, we have artificial sources. And for this, we have seen an increasingly contribution due to human activities. And this encompasses a wide range of sectors, from transportation and energy production to industrial processes and deforestation. Definitely, our modern lifestyle has accelerated the growth of these emissions.
Indeed. So let's maybe talk a little bit about the scale. So when it comes to natural carbon emissions, so carbon getting emitted from natural processes on Earth, they contribute roughly 770 gigatons of CO2 equivalent annually. And that's a huge amount of CO2. On the other hand, if we look at the artificial sources, they are responsible for 40 gigatons of CO2 equivalent per year, which is also a very big number. So it's quite clear that human activity is now a major contributor in the overall carbon emissions game.
I think, Rishi, these are very interesting numbers, and it was kind of a surprise for me also when we did some research around this. So just to summarize, we talk about roughly 800 gigatons of carbon dioxide a year, and roughly 5%, more or less, is what is coming now from human activities. Now, the problem is that this 5%, the growth rate of this 5% has been pretty steep in the last years, last decades. And the natural equilibrium between sinkers of CO2 and producing of CO2 has been broken. It was a subtle equilibrium around these 700 gigatons. And whatever, even if it's small, as a 5%, is coming on top, is breaking, is altering this very delicate equilibrium. Now, speaking about human activities, let's try to understand better what this top emitting sector. Now, definitely the energy sector is a significant contributor. We know the story about fossil fuels as a major contributor there. But it's not just about energy. So it's broader. We have industrial processes, we have deforestation, we have transportation that also play very important role.
Precisely. And just to give a little bit of quantification behind this, there are many ways of breaking down these numbers, and we have taken an approach of breaking it down by some known industries. But electricity and heat production, for example, contributes approximately 42% to these emissions. Industry, which includes manufacturing and construction, is about 19%. Transportation, agriculture, each contribute to roughly 15 percent, and residential and commercial sector contributes to just under 10% as well. So as we can see from these numbers, it sort of highlights the urgency of transitioning to cleaner energy sources, because all of these industries on which we depend contribute significantly to these artificial emissions, and we need to be rethinking our industrial and transportation systems if we need to abate these emissions.
Exactly. Now, just before we wrap up this episode, let's take a moment to understand why artificial carbon emitters pose such a significant challenge to manage and eliminate.
Absolutely. So unlike natural carbon emissions, which are part of Earth's processes, as you also described earlier on, Carmine, artificial emissions are not like that. They are directly linked to our way of life, and the systems or the infrastructure that we've built to live this life. The challenge arises because these emissions are deeply ingrained in our economies and the infrastructure we've built.
That's right. If we think about many of our everyday activities rely heavily on processes that emit carbon. From when we take a car burning gasoline or diesel, so transportation, for example, and so everything that is related mostly to energy production, and transitioning away from these practices require massive changes in our energy sources, transportation systems, and industrial processes.
Yeah, and this is not an easy thing to do. Certain sectors like heavy industry already have very limited alternatives to reduce emissions significantly. Industrial processes, often involve chemical reactions that will produce CO2, and unless we get rid of the process itself, it's very difficult to eliminate those emissions. So that's why finding greener alternatives without compromising production is not going to be an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it's not. Moreover, there is a global dimension to this challenge. So we know that different countries have different level of development, different steps on their own journey. And their dependence on certain industries may make the transition more challenging. Balancing economic growth with emission reduction, of course, it's a complex puzzle.
Yeah, and even more important is the behavioral aspect, shifting consumer habits and lifestyles, as well as creating awareness and support for sustainability requires effective communication as well as education on a massive scale.
Absolutely, Rishi. So as we continue on the path towards a sustainable future, it's crucial to recognize that managing and eliminating artificial carbon emitters is a multifaceted endeavor. It's not just about technology, it's about transforming our societies, economies, and mindsets.
Agree. Let's keep in mind that while the challenge is immense, so is our potential to innovate and adapt, as humans have shown over and over again. By working together and harnessing our collective knowledge, we can find solutions that lead us towards a more sustainable and resilient world.
On that note, dear listener, thank you once again for joining us on this second episode of Sustainability Forward. Today we talk about carbon emitters. We'll catch up you soon on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.